Oh, hello, and welcome to another fun filled edition of Adam's Music Box, where we're on the Sunday stream, which typically comes after the Saturday stream. So, Rick Beato, the king of music YouTube and a great musical mind, let's call him a musical genius because he really is. He released a video that I found very interesting this last week, and it's called why this song sucks or this song sucks because his series, one of many that's become very well known, is what makes this song great. And so this got people's attention because why this song sucks. Now, the key is that it wasn't actually a song that was written or performed by human musicians. It was a song composed entirely by AI based on prompts that Rick entered. And so in creating the prompts, you could say that maybe he deserved some writing credit, but I don't think he'd take it because most of it was composed and then performed by AI. And the AI was able to generate these songs based on the thematic prompts that Beato entered within a few minutes. And this raises a lot of questions in terms of music consumption, in terms of the financial aspects of the music industry, and in terms of artistry itself. So let's address the easiest question first, which is, are these songs good? I think the answer really depends on who you are as a music listener. Do I consider them good? No, I don't. And I probably feel that way for the same reason that Rick Beato does. Rick is a master musician. I'm a music junkie, musician myself, but not at the level of Rick. So I know my music. I know what I like. I like music that shows some skill, some passion, some verve, some joie de vivre. Call it what you will. All these sorts of characteristics that at least theoretically and probably in practice are more associated with the whoms than with the robots. But, and it's a big but, a Sir Mix-a-Lot big but, most people today don't listen to music with the intensity of me or Rick Beato. Well, you son of a bitch, people never did. Granted that, that's true, but there was an era where music listening was something that even by the average normie type of person was more involved than what we have today. And a lot of this is due to marketing, a lot of this is due to the kinds of music, a lot of it was due to the media on which the music was sold. So I would say that in terms of musical involvement by the listener, and we're talking now about recorded music rather than live music, I would say that the golden age of listener devotion to a recorded format was probably the golden age of the LP, which probably began with the birth of the concept album, because it was the concept album that gave non classical artists a chance to do something unique with an LP that made it something more than a couple of singles and then a collection of other songs that were, in many cases, filler. And the inventor of the concept LP was Frank Sinatra. In the mid 50s, his Capitol recordings started to explore thematic concepts, sometimes musical concepts as well. And this continued well into his reprise years, which I prefer his reprise recordings. Things like Sinatra and Strings, well, the theme was a lush string setting. Songs, albums like Sings for Only the Lonely, that has the theme of loneliness. Where Are You? All of them have, almost every Sinatra album from the mid 50s on was a concept album. And this was something that really became central to the comparatively new genre of rock and roll. Because while the early rock albums suffered from the same problems as the classic pop albums, where, okay, we'll put the singles on the albums and then the rest is sort of filler, some good songs, some mediocre. But with the rock and roll concept album, a new kind of listening experience was formed, because it wasn't really enough to just drop the needle on your favorite one or two songs. The entire album, all sort of 35 to 50 minutes, because that's the average length of a music you can squeeze onto an LP, it was a singular concept that was intended to be listened to in a single sitting, and that's what people did. You got this was also an age when stereo equipment was becoming higher and higher in quality. You sort of had a golden age of stereo equipment in the 60s and 70s, and that continues, but it's become less mainstream. The people who buy that kind of stuff that now are really rich, geeky music types. Where in the 60s and 70s and into the 80s, it was just something that if you had the money, you would have a decent or nice stereo system, and people used them. They would sit in their homes, in their rooms, and wherever you kept it, and they would listen to entire concept albums. Think Pet Sounds, Dark Side of the Moon, any Led Zeppelin album, the latest by the Eagles, a Steely Dan album, the Doobie Brothers, Bad Company. They would sit and listen to these albums front to back, and they would have a good time. You could do it alone, you could do it with people, you could make a party out of it, you could break the law doing it, even though most of those laws should be changed. And there you go. Today, music serves a different purpose. Today, we're all TV stars, we're all filmmakers. And as you can see from me, you don't need good camera equipment, and you don't even need a set. Now, what's something that, visual programming tends to have? It tends to have a musical underscore. And voila, that's where most people are connecting with recorded music today. It's the music in the background to a TikTok video. You see what I'm getting at. It's the music that someone has licensed at Netflix. And why is that important? Because music licensing is now the most lucrative stream of revenue for the music industry. Streaming doesn't have good revenue generation for music. Live concerts can still be very good, not necessarily because of the tickets themselves, but because of the merch. When you're at a concert, that $60 Weird Al Yankovic T-shirt seems very appealing, especially after three $18 beers. And that is indeed part of the business model. But the actual physical formats, while they remain for audiophiles and for collectors of different sorts, it's still a meager percentage of the revenue stream. Yeah, it's bigger than it was 10 years ago, but it's still small in the grand scheme of things. And so, one of the reasons that I think people today are much more open to let's be generous and call it mediocre quality AI music than they would be if something similar came out in the 60s, 70s, or 80s is because we're no longer in that golden age of the music listening experience. We're in a time where the music is an underscore, it's background music, it's music where even when it's performed live, it's stuff that you hear while someone dances or while fireworks go off or while things happen on the jumbotrons and things like that. There are fewer and fewer major, and I mean sort of stadium level artists that could just, sit there with their instruments with a decent light show, because even back in the day, to fill a stadium, you needed some visual element. And some bands really excelled at it and made it a theatrical experience. Bands like Pink Floyd, for instance. But in general, people were willing to go to a local sports arena and listen to four or five guys just playing their guitars, playing their keyboards, playing their drums without the need to be having constant visual bombardment. So even the live experience now, you could argue that it's musical entertainment rather than music itself. Um, and this got me thinking about something else. It got me thinking about Milli Vanilli. Now, I've always thought that Rob and Fab, the two guys in Milli Vanilli, I thought that they were treated really, really unfairly by the music industry. For those who don't know the story, at the end of the 80s, a band, two guys who were ostensibly singers, but they weren't, they were in a band called Milli Vanilli, and they had some huge hits. Girl, it's true. Ooh, 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 I love you. That was but they had others too. Blame It on the Rain and so forth. And they were huge. It was aimed at young people, and young people ate it up. This was sort of the age of sort of the New Jack style of sort of R&B. Think sort of Paula Abdul, think of Janet Jackson stuff at that period, and Milli Vanilli slotted right into that mix. Now, there was only one problem, or at least people thought it was a problem. The two guys, who were great professional dancers, they were fashion designers, they knew how to dress, they had the look, they were male models and all that, but they didn't sing a note on the album. Some session guys they hired did all of the singing. And when they were performing live, the vocals were on a tape. They were recorded vocal tracks. And so this caused quite a stir at the end of the 80s. People thought this was a huge scandal. And, to bear things in mind, a lot of stuff happened in 1989. The Berlin Wall fell down. And, with the threat of communism defeated, it was really time to go after Milli Vanilli because, everyone needs an enemy. And I just thought that they were treated really unfair. The record labels knew, they kept it secret, but then sort of fed the press beast when the cat started to, come out of the bag. And they sort of were publicly disgraced. Rob became addicted to drugs. He eventually died. Before he died, he attempted suicide. Very sad stuff. Fab is actually a really inspirational story. He taught himself how to be a pretty decent singer. Well, he had a singing coach, a vocal coach, and he performs the Milli Vanilli stuff, singing it with his own voice. And he does a lot of fashion designing stuff and modeling. I think he owns or co-owns a shop in Paris that sells clothes or something like that. And he's on Instagram and other places, very inspirational guy. So it just goes to show how the two of them, who were very close friends in their youth, they took the situation very differently. But I think the whole thing was very unfair. A recent documentary has come out about it, which I think is very good. And it really got me thinking, well, the media can condition people to feel anything. And the media, because they knew it would sell, commercial airtime, it would sell newspapers in the day, they really hammered this Milli Vanilli story hard because it was the kind of scandal that the world needed. And it was very unfair because while they weren't singing, they were real humans and they were genuinely providing an entertainment experience. Today, you have artists that, thanks to autotune, you hardly hear their own voice, whether on record or on the recorded track that they're dancing to on stage during a live performance. You have music that's so heavily quantized, so heavily autotuned that even though it's not technically AI generated, the robot input is almost as much. So when you think about it, the distance between your average sort of pop singer today and something that's fully AI is pretty narrow. Where if you were to, let's say, take Jimmy Webb's MacArthur Park, a song that could never be conceptualized with a robotic prompt unless you specifically told it to copy that song, which would, of course, I would think be a fraudulent situation. But take a really unique, beautiful, harmonically complex song with different elements to it, movements, if you will, and compare that to the modern AI. Well, there's a huge creativity gap there, and I would say a gap in terms of audience engagement. Because once you hear the first couple of bars in these AI songs that Rick generated, you're kind of done. You kind of can predict what comes next. There's no predicting what comes next in a song like MacArthur Park, and that's just one sort of instance where this would apply. But going back to Milli Vanilli, that's why I think that they were really given a raw deal. I mean, from the beginning of pop music, you had session musicians, including backing vocalists, who would, let's just say, massage a mediocre vocalist's performance, but who might have a face that you want to put on the cover of a record. So that was something that existed decades before Milli Vanilli, and now post Milli Vanilli, everything is Milli Vanilli. It's Milli Vanilla because it's that much more bland and it's that much more fake, and nobody cares. And people have been fooled into listening on Spotify to fully AI generated music with a fake name and an AI generated image of the men in the band. They're not men, it's an AI generated image, and nobody really cares. And so I think we need to all apologize to Milli Vanilli. I mean, I don't. I was always on their side. But I think some of us out there, dare I say, need to apologize because what Milli Vanilli were doing, they were providing an authentic musical entertainment experience. The singing might have come from two other guys, but they were genuinely dancing. And they weren't robots, they weren't holograms, which, we've had holograms at music festivals. Some have, I think, done tours with holograms. I mean, so we're all really bought it up. And all that they did was dance while a tape of real singers was played. So the singing was real. It just wasn't from them. And they weren't performing it live, but the dancing was from them and they were doing that live. So I think that the world really owes them an apology. And so the next question that this all brings up is, what is the future of AI music? Is it going to harm the proliferation of real musicians creating real music? And I think no. The reason it's not going to do that is because all of this other stuff I mentioned already has. In other words, things have got so bad for live musicians that I don't think that AI, that fully AI generated music, is going to make it that much worse. You have a revenue model where unless you're hawking merchandise, you cannot really as a musician make money on any streaming platform unless you're already huge and have some sort of bespoke agreement. The average independent artist or small label artist that uploads their songs to YouTube or to the Spotify or to any of these others, you're not going to make a lot of money even if you get a lot of hits. The live music experience is also being harmed mainly by several things. You've got the asset managers who are buying up property and are using it as a speculative commodity rather than a place for a small business like a music club to conduct its thing or for people to live in. So you have that, which is taking away these small music venues throughout all these cities. Then you have regulations in the cities that are just driving any kind of creative business out. There's, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't smoke, you can't drink. I mean, you can be in a tent doing fentanyl while being covered in your own fecal matter. That's cool, Gavin Newsom. But if you're trying to run a business, a hospitality entertainment business, they get you left and right. And then there's the taxation, which has become so excessive in so many cities. Then there's the crime. Crime is out of control in most cities. I don't care what the statistics say, the crime simply isn't being reported, and they're changing the way that they describe it. Everyone knows that big cities today are a lot more unpredictably dangerous than they were even in previous, more predictable crime waves, because it's a different kind of crime. The crime is everywhere. You can't really run away from it, it finds you. So that's hurting the live music experience. So you can't make money as a musician putting your recorded music online. You can't really find a place to do a small gig. Not that small gigs were ever that financially worthwhile. They were usually, unless you had loads of them, it was really a stepping stone to larger gigs or to session work. Then there's session work. There's fewer and fewer jobs for session musicians because long before these AI programs became widespread, you had people that had a laptop and maybe a little keyboard, and they could do anything they needed to create a pop song. Going back to the early 2000s, we're talking 20, in some cases 25 years ago. So the idea that you need like a wrecking crew or the guys from Toto to put together a great record the way you would in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, that's just not the case anymore. And it's been the case long, long before these modern AI programs became so widespread. And so let's recap that. So recorded music isn't a way to make a living anymore as a professional musician. The live music scene at the sort of club level is dying out. Even many theaters are closing. We're getting to a stage where you've got the arena and stadium acts and street musicians and not much in between, because the music clubs are dying and because the restaurant business is hurting so much because of all of those things I mentioned in local problems and municipal problems. You have fewer restaurateurs willing to pay a musician to sit in the corner and play the piano or guitar or sing the way you used to. You used to have a lot of nice restaurants and even some middle of the road restaurants where you had bands that were playing music to entertain the people while they ate and drunk, and you don't really have that as much as you used to have in most of these big markets. And so, between the end of session work as a huge, reliable source of income for virtuosic and disciplined musicians, between the fact that you can't make a living on streaming and that there's nowhere to gig anymore, the modern trends in the music industry, in politics, and in society have conspired to make life very difficult for a musician and for the people who like good music. People who want to go to the local restaurant or the local club and see a great band. People who would like to have a streaming platform that is both affordable but also compensates the musicians fairly. I mean, the music fans want this just as much as the artists, certainly in the case of live music. But they're just not getting it. And then there's people who, the people who watch Rick Beato, and it's millions of people who would prefer music that was sort of more reliant on great human input, the way that the pop music of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s into the 90s was. But however big that cohort is, it's not enough to sustain a music industry as a whole, given the fact that most people today see music as the background music for a TikTok video or a Netflix special, as opposed to, cranking up the Marantz and JBLs and Altic Lansings and the Macintoshes, that the name of a great amplifier is spelled differently than the computer. And, sit there, turn the lights off, smoke a little smoke, and do your thing. That's just not happening anymore. And so AI, I don't think, is going to do any more harm to music than that's already been done. What it will do is demonstrably show that people today just aren't as interested in music as people were in generations ago. And if you find that hard to believe, that's why you watch Rick Beato. That's probably why you found this channel, because more people than you would think actually do care about music. And because things like Rick Beato isn't gate kept, and because things like my small channel are not gate kept, people can see that there are folks out there who genuinely love music. But sadly, it's not enough to change an entire industry that has already been so cannibalized and balkanized that I don't think, is going to do much worse damage than with that which has already been done. But let me know what you think. And as always, like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.